Hello, my name is Tony King. I'm a photographer, and in this video, we are going to be talking about cropping versus not cropping. I take most of my pictures, actually I take all of my pictures in a 4:3 aspect ratio. I've said this before, it is my favorite aspect ratio. I think when you look at it, it kind of feels like you're looking out of a window. In this particular photo here, I literally am shooting through a photo. This poor fella didn't know what was going to happen to him when he started chewing whatever he's chewing, but I took a picture of him. I think it's decent, but today, what I wanted to go through was changing that aspect ratio. I've always kind of felt like editing a photo too much is like cheating. And so I try to stick to only color grading pictures. I usually won't even level an image if it's not level. And maybe you've noticed that if you've looked at my work. Recently, I've wanted to challenge myself a little bit more. So I decided to, change some of my images to a 2:1 aspect ratio. Why 2:1? It's probably my second favorite aspect ratio. That's the truth. I think it has a cinematic quality. When I was first starting to make YouTube videos, I was trying to make them as tight as possible. And 2:1 is a pretty tight widescreen ratio. So I have here a handful of shots that I took from this past weekend that I changed from 4:3 to 2:1, including this image here of this man. And I think once you get a little bit closer, it definitely has more of that cinematic feeling, and the out of focus foreground objects certainly create a more tight feeling that I think adds to the cinematic vibe. And this guy could be in a movie discussing something serious or being spied on by somebody, which is kind of weird to say because I took this photo. Wasn't trying to spy this fella. I just saw the shot and I took it. Next up, I have a butterfly shot, and I wanted to see, well, what does tightening this image actually do for this butterfly shot? It's not really a macro shot but I was pretty close to it. Center frame, a lot of leaves coming in and out of focus around the butterfly as it pollinates, and changing that aspect ratio doesn't do a whole lot to it. It does bring us a little bit closer to the butterfly. I do think it also gives a little bit more, let's call it cinematic, but a little bit more dreamy maybe of a vibe. Although in this particular image, I don't really think it adds all that much or takes much away from it. I just think it's kind of a different crop. But that is my personal opinion. I'm curious to see how people feel. And as we go throughout this, I'm also going to be working through my process of changing some aspect ratio in images. First, I wanted to go through a few that I'd already done, just to kind of give the idea of what I'm working on and what I'm seeing in these images. This is one of the shots that I am more kind of torn on. Please feel free to give me some feedback. So these are some flowers or something behind a building that I saw, and I caught through the shrubs and got some nice bokeh. And I really like all the empty space that really draws your eye to, the branches that are sticking out of the brush. And I think now that it's widescreen, I'm not sure if I like it better. Actually, I think the subject is more prominent, but I like the scale of the 4:3 a little bit more. I think, even though I'm overall very satisfied with this image and can't really complain, I think I did all right. Next, there was a lot of cicadas, and I was trying to really single them out. Likewise with the butterfly, like I didn't have a macro lens or anything on me. This was with a 50. Kind of wanted to see if I could get closer to it. I don't want to just crop in though. I want to change the aspect ratio. And so this is what turned out from that. I made it a little bit bigger, and I think this just doesn't have the quality in terms of just the technical quality to be like a documentary shot or anything like that. But I do think it tells a story a little bit more, being a little bit more narrow, and kind of, we don't really know how big this fence post is that this guy's standing on, and it gives him a little bit more scale, him or her, I don't know. I think this actually tells the story a bit better than the 4:3 aspect ratio version. Kind of holding on, gripping to this fence. What is there, beyond it? Is kind of this dark vastness, which I think was the interesting part of this image, outside of it being a orange cicada that is kind of neat. Next is a shot that I was very happy with and probably inspired this video the most. I saw this guy at the top of these stairs talking, and I was like, I really got to get a shot of him through the railing. And I missed it from the bottom. I got it from the top. He's not fully sharp, but I was pretty happy with this image. And then I made it widescreen to kind of make it feel more cinematic, like we're looking at some business guy on the phone in a high stakes drama or something. And I changed it to black and white also to highlight this nice like blurriness on the railing here on the left hand side. And then the bokeh kind of drifts away, which was green before, and now it's just kind of just gray. And actually he wasn't fully in focus. Close enough. I sharpened it. The top of the stairs is what ended up being in focus. But I'm actually really happy with with this shot, and I think it's what inspired me to make this video because of how satisfied I was with it. I really do think this adds an element of mystery, of intrigue, of drama that the image did not have before, even though I still like the original image. But I just think this is so much more elevated than what I had before. It makes me want to try more and more to do this 2:1 aspect ratio. Contrarily, I was pretty satisfied with the shot. I don't think it's the best shot ever by any stretch of the imagination, but I like the scale of it. I like the lighting on the trees and the shadows. I tried to make a little bit more out of the father walking his daughter there, and losing those shadows on the trees at the top, I think just takes away from the scale and the beauty of this image. And lastly, we have this guy looking off into nothingness, and I was wondering if making it wider would make it seem more like he's looking into something more interesting, something introspective maybe even. And here's the result, and I think it's slightly nicer, but not that much. There's not much comparison between the two, I don't think, in terms of what the image is actually telling. I think this is also closer, so it has an advantage in that regard. But, you know, the bokeh sticks out here and in the 4:3 aspect ratio version of the image. And so I think it's still just a guy kind of looking off. I think it's a nice image. I don't think it's that highly affected actually by changing the aspect ratio. So overall, what I'm starting to kind of decide in my head about changing the aspect ratio is, of course, yes, obviously it is extremely subjective. And I think in some instances it will add drama and narrative to the story if it's creating a tighter focus on the subject or contextualizing the subject with the story of the image a little bit better. For example, in this image, the subject is this man. I'm trying to find the story of what he's looking at. I don't think changing the aspect ratio from 2:1 to 4:3 is adding anything more to it. In the wider shot, you see that he's kind of looking off to the sky somewhere. There's nothing really to tell that story, and it kind of feels the same in the tighter image. Whereas in the wide image of the father walking his daughter, you see they're at a park, these are just nice trees. You kind of lose that when you go tighter and cut some details away. Versus the shot of the man, going back to that, I think, yes, you can see he's in a city park. It's a nice location, but I think so much more is given by intrigue of looking at him through these railings in the wider aspect ratio. As well as with the cicada, I think cutting out the bottom bit of green here and making it dark on the right by cutting that aspect ratio, you get a little bit nicer glow from the light on the cicada. And I really find it interesting how it goes from light to dark, basically left to right. I'm trying to learn how to tell my stories now through aspect ratio, as well as through, just the images that I take. It's been very fun so far, so I want to keep doing that today. So here I have chosen 13 images to go ahead and change from 4:3 aspect ratios to a 2:1 aspect ratio. I'm doing this in Photoshop Camera Raw 17.2 from the raw file of the image. And what I was trying to do was get a handful of different styles of shots. Like, for example, we're starting on a detail shot of a flower and leaf, which I was very happy with the shot when I took it. It's kind of soft in different parts, but I think that adds to it and it just fades off into green nothingness. I really like the scale of this image in a 4:3 aspect ratio and, the ins and outs of focus. So changing it to a 2:1 aspect ratio, I want to try and keep all the subject leaves, let's call them, in the frame. So I'm going to just shift it down a little bit and call it here. And what I'm seeing immediately is that it kind of exposes the lack of focus and kind of brings it out a little bit more than what it does in the wider image, which I think defeats the purpose of kind of this waviness of in and out of focus that I really like from the original image. But this is why I want to practice this. See, maybe when, to my opinion, it looks better, when it looks worse. Next, we have this woman on a hill having a picnic by herself. Hopefully she finds a friend at some point. Just kidding, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm not trying to dog on this woman, whoever she is. And I really like how, you can tell she's on a hill because of this diagonal line across the image. And then you can see, obviously, the trees are straight in the background. So there's a lot of intrigue there. And I was happy with the color of this shot for the most part, though I usually like a white sky overblown. This was a kind of gloomy day, so it's not as bright and vibrant as I would like. So I was thinking perhaps cutting that part out by going to 2:1 or cutting most of it out, maybe cropping in would create an interesting image. I'll put her on the right third of the shot, just like this. And I think we're already getting a little bit better. I might actually, while I'm at it, scoot in a little bit more on this crop and really get all the white of the sky out. This actually feels a lot more intimate, let's say, and cinematic as well. Now this feels like it could be a shot where we're looking at her or walking towards her and trying to join her on a picnic perhaps. I do think this is an interesting use of the 2:1 aspect ratio that I think is a positive. But going back to a white sky, I have two shots here from a hike I did on Arabia Mountain, which is here in Georgia, where I really like the white sky. But do I quite need as much of it as I have? Because I really like this landscape. It's pretty unique. Let's see how it feels in a 2:1 aspect ratio, or if there's a difference between the two. I don't want to crop out too much of the landscape while I'm cropping. I'm going to go ahead and align this on the left third. And I think this is one of those images, looking at it now, that maybe I don't quite have the information in the file to get a more close-up version of this shot because I'm shooting on 12 megapixels, but I don't think it's taking that much away from it or adding more to it. I think it would kind of depend on the medium at which you're looking at it. For this particular image, let me see if there's a difference here, because I think we have a little bit more going on with this water coming down the rocks. And I'm not going to crop in on this right now. Looking at it like this, I do think actually I'm going to have the same opinion as I did with the other image. I think it would be a case-by-case basis. Maybe if I had a more interesting subject, maybe standing in this area near the tree, then this would actually be a little bit more dreamy and cinematic in a way than it was before. But I actually really enjoy the scale of those original images, so perhaps I would actually lean towards enjoying those a bit more. We have this car with, kind of construction type barriers here and like a little bit of overgrown shrubbery, which I thought was a pretty cool shot, almost like coming out of a regular dystopian movie type thing. And I was really happy to get this shot, but maybe there's too much of a mess going on at the top. How much do we really need to see of the fence line here? Don't want to lose too much of the car, and in cropping this, I will lose kind of the back tire maybe, and I will lose the top of that fence line. But will this make it feel more like a movie kind of? You know what? I actually do quite like this image now. We're kind of honing in on this kind of grungy vibe a little bit more now that we're closer to it, a little bit tighter to it. So actually, I really enjoy this image now that it is in 2:1. I would say this is one of them that got better by changing the aspect ratio. Back to something similar to like the butterfly shot or the cicada shot. Here are two dragonflies. They might be mating. I don't really know what they're doing, but I took a picture of it. Let's see if going 2:1 helps us see them a little bit more. I'm going to center them in this shot. They're on a little piece of grass, and obviously we're closer to them and we can see them better here. And you know what? I actually do think this is nicer because the background with these little reflections, out of focus, blurry parts, it's kind of messy, but I like it. It reflects the truth of the image. And I think cutting out some of the top aspect allows you to enjoy the image even more, I think. This is a similar shot to the one that I took of the plants and the shrubs, where we kind of have a line across the image of what's in focus with a blurry background. These is like long grass with, I never know what these are called, but they look fuzzy. And so if I kind of cut off the bottom and the top, does it bring more subjectivity as in making it more of the subject? I mean, all of these plants, this is not like a glamour shot by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think there's a story in there of like what's hidden behind this grass, and I think it's out of focus. I think closing down on it kind of feels like we're looking more for something through this grass. And so I actually think this is a lot better, and a better example than the one I showed before of how tightening an image like this can add to the story more. Like this reminds me of the movie Mud or something that I've seen, that like we're looking for somebody in kind of a wet, damp area with like foliage similar to this, I guess. That's just what I'm thinking. Another type of landscape that I like to take is kind of these trails, but I really like the depth of this image, where you can see kind of these wood stakes going down into the woods and these trees in the background. This tree really is the main subject and focus, I guess, although there's a handful of things in focus. But I wanted to see if it'll make us feel like something's about to walk out, or like, I don't know, maybe we're thinking, and my wife is gonna love this reference, like Pride and Prejudice, somebody's gonna walk through the woods romantically to come say what's up, or, you know, profess their love. So I don't want to lose the wood stakes here though, and I don't really want to lose my out of focus leaves at the front or on the side. So if I crop it in a bit like so, keep that tree kind of in the center. And I do think, because this is widescreen, it feels more like a movie. I don't think it necessarily makes the image more glamorous. To me, actually, I think it draws away from it, actually. The more that I look at it, I like the vast green. I like the in-your-faceness of the 4x3 original version. One that I think will definitely probably be it is of this heron sticking its head out the water. Well, its entire body out the water. It's on its feet. I was very happy with this shot. I have a few others that I took of this heron that I really liked, of it taking off in flight, of it flying. Actually, it was two. I got two that same day. It was like, he's basically looking at his little friend over there. So if I cut in, yes, we get in closer on the detail, but I think this makes it a lot more subjective. We don't really need the scale of the image in the shot. You don't need to know how far away I was, because I was pretty far away. I shot this on a 135, so it wasn't like a crazy telephoto lens, but still got, you know, decently close to it, and he's in pretty sharp focus. So I actually really enjoy this cropped. I think it tells more of a dramatic story. There's more of an effect to the image because of the crop to a 2:1 aspect ratio. So I think this is one of the ones that I really enjoy. If you want to see other shots of the herons flying, actually, that I cropped down, I think they're really nice. You can follow me on Instagram at Tony King Pics. I posted some of those there, and I might post some of these there as well, and continue on this process of discovering other ways of telling the stories through aspect ratio. And I think that's what I want this video to kind of be. I know I'm just kind of talking through images and editing them. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Maybe I cut out most of what I said, and that's why I'm saying it's boring. You might be thinking, it wasn't that boring, but yeah, maybe it was for me. I've been here for 3 hours recording this. Just kidding. I would definitely encourage anyone to try and do work like this on your images, and if you can, in your camera as you're shooting, shoot at different aspect ratios to try and tell your stories in different ways and at different scales. I've found this to be a very informative project, and something that I'm going to continue doing, and who knows, maybe I'll make a follow-up. Maybe you'll even see a whole photo album that is not 4:3 aspect ratio, which is like unheard of for me. They're all 4:3 pretty much, except for a handful of vertical shots, mostly for work. I don't really like vertical. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below of which shots you liked better, 4:3 or 2:1, and what kind of things that you took from them. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel for more content, not necessarily just like this, but I got plenty of other photography content, gear reviews, and photo stuff in general that you're more than welcome to check out. And I hope you enjoy this video. Subscribe for more. I guess, again, I've been Tony King. See you later. Thanks for watching. That's what I meant to say.